Okay, 3A. 3A towards the bottom, about 4 or 5 lines from the bottom. Trying to figure out who the author of our Mishnah is. So the Gemara said, Mani Masnisin. Who is the author of our Mishnah? Now, what's the problem? The problem is each part of the parts of the Mishnah are not going to fit with one author. We're going to go through a whole Daf Gemara trying to figure out who is the author of our Mishnah. So, Mani Masnisin, Lo Rabbi Shmuel, Lo Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah is not the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, and it's also not the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel, if it is Rabbi Shmuel, the Mishnah said there's 4 categories of oaths that a person makes. 2 in the future and 2 in the past. So, according to Rabbi Shmuel, you're only liable for the 2 in the future. You're not liable for the 2 in the past. So, Eino Chayv Ela Asid. So, if it's according to Rabbi Shmuel, you have a problem with the very first part of the Mishnah that says Shavuos Shtayim Shehein Arba. What are the 4 biblical oaths that you are going to be violating? He has only 2, the ones in the future. I will eat, I will not eat. Rabbi Akiva, and if you'll tell me that this is Rabbi Akiva, Ha'amar al helim tuma hu chayiv, ve'eno chayiv al helim mikdash. Rabbi Akiva holds that you're liable if you eat something which is impure, but you're not liable if you walk into the temple when you are impure. Yeah, for that you're not going to know.
Sorry,
good morning. For that you're not going to be liable.
Go back.
So for that you're not going to be liable. And our Mishnah says that there are 4 cases of impurity that you are going to be liable for. 2 of them are regarding the base of Mikdash. So the Mishnah, if it can't be Rabbi Shimon, it can't be Rabbi Akiva. So it says the Gemara, it could. Ibais Eimer Rabbi Shmuel and Ibais Eimer Rabbi Akiva. We can try to make the Mishnah go like Rabbi Shmuel, and we can try to make the Mishnah go like Rabbi Akiva. So we'll go one at a time. The very bottom of 3A. So Ibais Eimer Rabbi Shmuel. If you'll tell me, maybe the Mishnah is Rabbi Shmuel. Now, what was the problem with Rabbi Shmuel? He only had the 2 future oaths. He didn't have the 2 oaths in the past. I did eat or I didn't eat. He's not liable for those. So how are you going to make that work? So it says, Ibais Eimer Rabbi Shmuel, mehen lechiv or mehen liptor. When the Mishnah said 2 that are 4, it wasn't saying you're obligated for 4. It's saying you're obligated for 2 and you're exempt from the other 2. So that would be very good according to Rabbi Shmuel. You're liable for 2, the 2 that are in the future oaths. I will eat, I will not eat. And the past oaths, I ate or I didn't eat, you're going to be exempt for those. If that would be true, that would be very good for Rabbi Shmuel. V'ibais Eimer Rabbi Akiva, also Rabbi Akiva that only holds of 2 out of the 4 cases of impurity. Mehen lechiyav u'mehen lifter. So 2 of them are going to be liable. The ones regarding the actual food that is holy. You forgot you were holy, you forgot it was holy. But the ones regarding the base of Mikdash, that you're going to be exempt from. So says the Gemara, lifter, turning the page, lifter, but one of the cases in our Mishnah is Maros Negayim. Maros Negayim are the tzaras, different kind of tzaras. And there, the Maros Negayim, Ma Hasam Kulhu Lechiyuva, when we say in our Mishnah, 2 that are 4, so when it came to tzaras, we are referring to 4 types of tzaras. 4 types of tzaras that you are liable for. So how can you tell me that the other parts of the Mishnah, like oaths and impurity, is only 2 that you're liable and 2 that you're exempt for? We want the Mishnah to be parallel. We want them to all be to be the same. So since Negayim is 2 that's 4, and it's all 4, and it's all 4 are cases of obligation that you're obligated for them. So Av Hachanami, Kulhu Lechiyuva, so too by Shavuos and by Tumah, by oaths, and by good morning, and by impurity, that's also a case where you are going to be liable. And if And if you're liable 4 cases, so then we're back to our question, who is the Mishnah like? If it's Rabbi Shmuel, he only has 2 out of the cases of the oaths. If it's Rabbi Akiva, he only has 2 of the cases of impurity. So says the Gemara, "V'chilo mechayev Rabbi Shmuel, the sha'avar, that's a korban. Aval malkos chiyube mechayev." Maybe you could say like this, but really the Mishnah is Rabbi Shmuel. What was the problem with Rabbi Shmuel? He only holds that you're liable 2 out of the 4 oaths. Says the Gemara, well, maybe what it means is you're only liable to bring a sacrifice if you do it inadvertently for 2 out of the 4 oaths. That's all Rabbi Shmuel said. But when it comes to malchus, getting lashes, that you're going to be liable for all 4 cases. Now, if that would be true, so then our Mishnah would be telling you that that you'd be liable for 4 cases of lashes. Now, there's an implicit question here, which the Gemara doesn't spell out, but it's about to answer. If we make 4 cases of oaths, now that you're liable, brand new. Looks new. It's a new one. So
I didn't start ordering on the last
right there, about the 4th line. So if you if we speak it out, there's 4 cases of oaths, and we're saying now that Rabbi Shmuel is liable to get lashes for the 4 cases. So now, so the problem is that we're going to have 2 cases that are going to be a lav, a negative commandment, when you don't keep your oath without doing anything. So let's say, so one case is that so let's say you have a case of in the past you say I ate or I didn't eat. So right, any past oath you make is going to be, if that's not true, so then that's going to be a negative prohibition with no action. So I ate. You make an oath that I ate, and it wasn't true. You didn't eat. Or you make an oath I didn't eat, and it wasn't true. You did eat. You didn't do any action, and yet you're liable malchus. So how are you liable malchus for that? It's a lav she'ein bo ma'isa. It's a lav. It's a negative commandment. It does not carry with it any action. So to that, the Gemara says that could be ukid Rava. What does Rava say? Rava says that the Amar Rava beferish ribsa Torah shvua sheker dumya de shvua sham. Rashi explains that in the world of oaths, so there's an extra word. From that extra word, Rava learns out that a shvua sheker was going to be similar to a shvua sham. Now, a shvua sheker is when you say something which is just not true, right? So you make a shvua sheker, I'm going to eat it, and then you don't eat. A shvua shav is false. So you make a swear that the table is a chair, and that's not a chair. That's a shvua shav. So the Gemara learns out that even though a shvua shav, when you're changing something which is obvious, this tissue box is a bottle, it's not true, and you make an oath on that. So the Gemara says that there, Rashi explains, there's a special verse that tells you for such an oath, you're liable malchus. If you make an oath that the chair is a table, the table is a chair, things like that. There's an extra word in the same parsha which Rava learns to teach you that even a shvua which is false, you will also get malchus for. You'll also get lashes for. So Rava is the one who teaches us that even though a oath about the past is a negative prohibition, which does not carry with it lashes, but there's an extra word which compares a shvua sheker to a shvua shav, a false shvua to a shvua that's just not a shvua that's a lie versus a shvua that's just false. The Torah compares the two. Ma shav l'shavar, av sheker nami l'shavar. Just like a shvua shav, which is for not, a table, a chair, chair is a table. Just like that, the Torah includes and it gives you malchus, even though you didn't do an action. So too, the other kind of shvua about the past, that's also included as it's an exception to the rule that even though you didn't do anything, you just made an oath that I didn't eat and it's not true, or I did eat and it's not true, you'll still be liable for lashes. So now, that means that of the 4 oaths in our Mishnah, we just knocked out 2 of them, the 2 in the past, and said that you get lashes for those. Why? Rava. Rava has an extra word that compares that shvua sha'avar, a past shvua, to a shvua shav. Now, what about the future oaths? What the future oath? I will eat or I will not eat, right? So let's say you make an oath, I will not eat an apple today. And you get up and you go and eat the apple. So that's a negative commandment. You violated the oath, but you did action, right? So now that's a 3rd case in the Mishnah of a negative commandment that you will get lashes for. The 2 in the past, it's a special pasuk. The 1 in the future, you did an action. That leaves you with 1 left. I will eat an apple today, and you sit back not eating an apple today. So that's a negative commandment with no action. And now we're saying that Rabbi Shmuel holds that all 4 oaths carry with them lashes. The 2 in the past, special verse. 1 in the future, you got up and you ate. 1 more, you didn't do anything. So on that, the Gemara jumps and says, Bishlama achalti, velo achalti. In the past, those are 2 examples of past, either I ate or I didn't eat, is kidirava. That's like Rava, special verse, exception to the rule. I didn't do an action, I'm still liable for it. Fine. Shelo ochel, I will not eat. And you get up, ve'achal, nami lav, shi yesh bo maisahu. That's also a negative commandment that carries with it a action. Ela ochel v'lo achal, if you say I'm going to eat an apple today, let's say, and you don't eat it, so why are you liable? It's a lav she'ein bo maisahu. It's a negative commandment that does not carry with it an action. And once again, Rabbi Shmuel says, right now the Gemara understands that according to Rabbi Shmuel, he only holds that you're liable a korban, a sacrifice, for the 2 oaths that are in the future, not for the past. When the Mishnah says you're liable for 4, 2 that are 4, it was referring to lashes. The problem is we only found that 3 out of the 4 you actually will get lashes. Where we're stuck on the 4th case, where is the lashes? So now the Gemara is going to take like a big,
4th case is the prohibition that does not involve action.
The Mishnah says there are 4 cases that you're liable for. No pun intended. Yeah, you're liable for. So what are you liable? Liable what? So at first we thought you're liable a sacrifice if you mess up. But now we say that can't be.
Right.
If it's Rabbi Shmuel, it can't be. So now you're liable lashes. So all 4 you're going to get lashes. Okay. So the ones in the past we got. 1 in the future we got. The 4th one we're stuck. So yeah, good. So now says the Gemara, a problem with this whole thing is that if so says the Gemara, Kasavar, very simple. There's 2 opinions. There's a negative prohibition, need to have an action in order to get lashes. The Gemara assumed originally, sounds like the simpler opinion is that it does. Now the Gemara says, Kasavar Rabbi Shmuel, lav she'ein b'maisa lo kan. Okay, Rabbi Shmuel is going to hold that even a negative commandment, which does not have an action, that will get you lashes. That was really 2 opinions in Makos. Does it or does it not get you lashes? So now the Gemara is going to go on it's going to have a problem, not a problem with Rabbi Shmuel, a problem in halacha. Why? Because Rabbi Yochanan says that the halacha is going to be like an anonymous mission, right? So Rabbi Yochanan has a statement that halacha is like an anonymous mission. Our mission is anonymous. It says 2 that are 4. It doesn't say a name. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, the halacha is like that. And the problem is going to be that Rabbi Yochanan says the halacha is also like the opinion that a negative commandment has to carry with it an action in order to be liable. So how can you fit those 2 together? How can the halacha be like our Mishnah and you have to have it? So that's going to be a whole to do. So If this is true, that you made the Mishnah like Rabbi Shmuel, and you stood on your head to explain that it must be, he holds that a negative commandment doesn't carry with it a negative prohibition, then you're going to have a problem from like left field. Why? Rabbi Yochanan is not Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan says halakha is like a stam Mishnah, like an anonymous Mishnah. So the Itmar, and there's another statement, Shvuah she'ochel, kikar zuhayom. We have, if a guy makes a shvuah, I will eat this loaf today. The avar hayom v'lo achel, and the day passed, and he did not keep his oath. Passively, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, the Armi Chervayu ein aloka. Both Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both say you don't get lashes for very different reasons. This is also in Makos. Rabbi Yochanan Amar ein aloka mishum davi lav shem b'maisa. It's a lav she'ein b'maisa. You didn't do anything today. The kolav shem b'maisa ein lokan alav. That's what Rabbi Yochanan himself holds. Reish Lakish argues Amar ein aloka, because why it's asra safeki. It's one of these cases where you got warned, but since you have the whole day to not fulfill your oath, we don't know what's going to happen today. Are you going to do it or you're not going to do it? A hasra has to be within a very short period of time of the action. So at least the beginning of the action. So when you have the whole day to do something, so that's a big doubt. Your warning is dependent on the next 10 hours. That's called a hasra, a warning, which is doubtful. That's also a machlokas. Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, is hasra savik, is that a good warning or not a good warning? So Reish Lakish said, because hasra savik, the hasra suffix, this kind of warning is not considered a good warning, and if it's not a good warning, then you won't get lashes. So that's why Reish Lakish says you don't get lashes. But what do we care? We care about Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says by passively violating your oath, you do not get lashes. And Rabbi Yochanan says the halacha accords with an anonymous Mishnah, which if it's Rabbi Shmuel, like we just said, then our Mishnah is teaching us that a negative commandment without a positive action, you will get lashes for. So how could Rabbi Yochanan himself hold the halakha like our Mishnah, when that's a negative commandment with no action? You are liable. Rabbi Yochanan himself holds by a case of a shvuah, but he himself holds that you're not liable for. So the Gemara is going to attempt to, if we found another anonymous Mishnah that teaches us that a negative commandment with a positive act you are liable for, so that means that we can reconcile Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan himself holds you need to have a positive action to be liable. If we find another anonymous Mishnah, so then that's going to help us. We'll just say he's referring to that Mishnah. The problem is going to be, though, then you're going to have two anonymous Mishnayos contradicting each other. So then the Gemara is going to ask, what's with Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, who wrote the Mishnayos? Well, what does he hold like? He organized the Mishnayos. So does he hold? Yes, and that's going to be the next little while. So, okay. Rabbi Yochanan Stama Acharina Eshka. He found another Stam Mishnah. So, okay, that's great. Which one? You can't just say that. You gotta tell me. What do you mean? Hey, Stama, which Stama? So, Ilema, maybe you'll tell me Hi Stama the Tanan, the following Mishnah. Achel Hamosir. Sorry, Aval Hamosir Betahor. If you leave over the Korban Pesach, a pure Korban Pesach, but you leave it over no sar, you leave it over overnight, which you're not supposed to do. The Hashover Betame, and if it got impure and you break its bone, so you can't break its bone if it's pure, but if it's impure and you break its bone, or if you leave a pure Korban Pesach sacrifice overnight, Eino Lokas Arbaim, you will not be liable 40 lashes. So, says the Gemara, Bishlam Hashover Betame. I understand if you break an impure Pesach bone, the Pesach, the Paschal offering, and you break that bone betame, you're not liable. Why? The Ksiv, the Etzim Lo Sishvrubo, it says you shouldn't break the bone, and it was only referring to something which is the kosher, below apostle. It was referring to the Korban Pesach you're going to eat. That it's pure, it's normal. That you can't break. Fine, that I get. If you can't eat it anyways, who says the Torah was talking about that? So that's why you don't get lashes for that. Fine. But hold on. About Hamosir B'Tohor, leaving over food overnight, my time of that you don't get malchus. Why don't you get malchus lashes for leaving food overnight? Oh, sounds like because leaving something overnight is a passive act. For a passive act, you don't get malchus. It's a negative commandment with a passive act, and that you shouldn't get malchus. Lav mishum dehoyi lav she'ein b'maisa v'kol lav she'ein b'maisa ein lo k'alav. Is that Mishnah in Pesachim teaching us? Is it not teaching us that because leaving the Pesach offering overnight is a passive act and a negative commandment that's done passively, that's violated passively, you have not violated, you won't get lashes for. So we found another Mishnah, which is also anonymous. So when Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is like an anonymous Mishnah, he could be referring to that Mishnah, since he himself holds that a negative commandment needs to have a positive act in order to get lashes. Okay. So says the Gemara now on that, hold on, not so fast. Why? You made one assumption over here, a big fat assumption, which also came up in Malchus. What was the big fat assumption? That the reason why you're not liable, Malchus, for leaving your Pesach offering overnight is because it was done passively. But maybe there's another reason why you don't get Malchus. What's nosar? Nosar was the example in Malchus. It's a lav shenitak la'aseh. It's a negative commandment, but it has a positive commandment that follows it to rectify your negative commandment. The Torah says, don't leave over, make sure you burn it. So that also, that's another example of a negative commandment that doesn't get lashes. So you have two reasons why nosar might not get lashes. So how did you choose one reason? Oh, because it was passive. Maybe it's another reason, because as a positive commandment, rectifying your violation. And therefore, it's also less stringent in a certain way, because the Torah gave you rectification for it. So maybe that's why you don't get lashes. So that's the Gemara's question. How do you know that that Mishnah is for sure like this opinion that you don't get lashes for a passive violation? Who says that's like Rabbi Yaakov, who says that a negative commandment done passively, you don't get lashes for it. Dilma Rabbi Yehuda, maybe it's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. What's Rabbi Yehuda? The Torah came and told you, litain aseh, achar los aseh. It's giving you an aseh, following a los aseh. But that's the only reason why you're liable. If the Torah didn't give you a positive commandment following this negative commandment, if it didn't give you rectification to go and burn the nosar, of course you would be liable lashes, even though it's passive. So halav haki lucky, which if I remember correctly was really Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish in Makos also. So now, where is this Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yehuda? Who are they? Where do we find them? The Tanya in the following brisa: Lo so sir mimenu ad boker. You cannot leave nosar over until the morning. But eish tisrofu, get up and burn it. You have to burn it. Bahakasim comes the scripture, comes the Torah, litain aseh. It gives a positive commandment, achar los aseh, after a negative commandment, to teach you, lomar, she'ein lo kinalav, that you do not get malchus. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says you don't get lashes, since it gave you a positive commandment that follows a negative commandment, therefore you don't get lashes. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, nah, that's not the reason. Ela mishum b'havi lav she'ein b'maisa. That's why. The lav she'ein b'maisa, ein lo kinalav. And any negative commandment, which is not, which is violated passively, you will not get lashes for. So, once again, we're trying to find an anonymous Mishnah that will agree with Rabbi Yochanan that a negative commandment, which is violated passively, you do not get lashes for. So we tried Pesachim. The problem with Pesachim, there could be two reasons. So you don't have a proof one way or another, because that anonymous Mishnah might agree with the other opinion that it's a negative commandment, which is followed by a positive commandment. So now we're back stuck. The halacha according to Rabbi Yochanan is like an anonymous Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan himself says that you don't get lashes for violating a negative commandment passively. So we're looking for another anonymous Mishnah that it should fit with Rabbi Yochanan and it shouldn't be a contradiction. So Ela Hayistama Ashkach.
Oh.
You guys know who he is? Who? Mm-hmm. Don't worry, I will. How are you? You can join us if you want.
Your name?
David Gleizer.
Shlomo.
Choose nice to meet you. Persian? Which Sephardi are you? Persian?
Moroccan.
Moroccan. Okay, that
How are
counts.
you? I'm good. Daf Yomi.
Last two lines of Gimel Amud Beis. Okay, Elahai Stam Eshkach. Rather, we found another anonymous Mishnah that taught the following. Coming up in about 3 weeks. So 2.5 weeks. Shavua shelo ochel tikar zu. Shavua shelo ochel. So you made 2 oaths back to back. An oath, I will not eat this loaf. An oath, I will not eat it. Back to back oaths. The achla, and you got up and you did eat it. Are you liable 1 or are you liable 2? So you'd say you're liable 2, right? Well, the Gemara says you're liable 1. Why? Interesting idea. The first time you made an oath, you are now commanded to keep it. Once you have a mitzvah on you that you're commanded to do, so you can't make a shvuah again on top of that. You're already commanded. It's a shvuah shalakayim as a mitzvah. So you're already obligated to keep that. There's no other place for the mitzvah to latch onto, so to speak. Therefore, you're only liable 1. Says the Gemara, what we need is, the Gemara says, Zuhi shvuas bituit. This is the example of a shvuas bituit, the category of shvuas that we're talking about, where you utter something. Shechayaven al zedono matos. It's this kind of shvuah that you're liable lashes for. The al shigagasa korban olav yored. And if you do it inadvertently, you violate it, then you're liable a korban olav yored. So when the Mishnah said zuhi, only this kind you're liable for lashes, but not another kind. So what's special about this kind, and what are you coming to exclude? So zuhi dechayav al zdono makos. It's this that you're liable makos. Aval ochel v'lo ochel. If you were to say, I will eat, and then you passively sat back and didn't eat, that's low lucky. That you don't get makos for. Why? Because it's a lav she'ein b'maisa. It's a negative commandment. You violated it by not keeping your oath, but you violated it passively. So that's why. So we found an anonymous Mishnah that holds like this, and therefore it could accord with Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore the Mishnah could be Rabbi Shmuel and could be talking about 4 cases, not of a korban, 4 cases of lashes. So now, the problem is now you have 2 anonymous Mishnayos that seem to be contradicting each other. So Michti, Haistama, Haistama, they're both anonymous. So my chazi da avid ki haistama, the avid ki haistama. Why all of a sudden do we give precedence to the latter Mishnah and say that that's how Rabbi Yochanan goes? Maybe the halacha is like the Stam Mishnah, and it's our Mishnah. You have 2 anonymous Mishnayos, and you have Rabbi Yochanan saying halacha is like an anonymous Mishnah. So even though the first one would contradict him, and the second one would go like him, but how do you know which one the halacha is like? Halacha is Stam Mishnah. Why do you give precedence over the latter one versus the former one? So says the Gemara, well, according to that reasoning, Rebbe Gufe. Hold on, we have another question. How did Rebbe make 2 Mishnayos anonymous? When he makes Mishnayos anonymous, it usually means that's because he holds the halachas like that. Even sometimes when the Mishnayos is going according to one opinion, Rebbe will make it anonymous because he wants you to think it's like the majority opinion, because he holds the halachas like that. So Rebbe made one Mishnah anonymous, and he made another Mishnah anonymous. So it sounds like he holds the halachas like both. But how could the halacha be like both? Is the halacha like the first Mishnah that you would not get malchus lashes for passively violating that you would get lashes for violating a commandment for violating a negative commandment passively, or is the halacha like that Mishnah later on, which says that you do not get lashes? Which means it can't be both. That would be a contradiction in Rebbe himself. So here you do get lashes, there you don't get lashes. So really like this. We're going back now. Erase. Elami kara savar lav she'en lo ma'isa lo kala. Really, we hold that a negative commandment that's violated passively, you do get malchus. That's like the first Mishnah. Vistama, and that's how Rebbe made it anonymous. The Hadar, then he himself retracted. As he was compiling the Mishnayos, he realized there were other proofs that really seem to align with the other opinion that you don't get malchus. The sasma of a Hadar, savar, ein lo kinalav. Really, he held ein lo kinalav, the sasma, and he made that other Mishnah anonymous. So what are you going to ask? So erase the first Mishnah. Don't leave it the way it is. Yeah, delete it. And so it says, Mishnah lo zaza mimkoma. He didn't want to amend the first Mishnah. Why not? Says Rashi, because people were already memorizing this Mishnah. Rashi was already well known amongst most of the students, and he didn't want them to forget the Mishnahs. The whole thing was written down that we shouldn't forget them. So they memorized the Mishnahs. They knew it all by heart. Mm-hmm. So it was already in their tongues how the Mishnah went. He didn't want to go and amend it. But in terms of halachically, it's going to go like the latter Mishnah. And he wanted them to understand. You'll understand. You're going through the Mishnahs, and you'll realize, oh my gosh, the first Mishnah, you get lashes for violating a commandment passively. But then Rebbe, who wrote the Mishnahs, in 20 daf from now, is going to say the exact opposite. You're going to realize that afterwards I retracted, and I go really like the final opinion, right? So this is in general rule. If you find a contradiction like this, comes from different places, seemingly a contradiction in two Mishnayos, and they're both anonymous, you can assume, unless told otherwise, that the latter one is what was Rebbe's final conclusion, and the former one was he didn't erase for his reasons to make the memorizing easier and not confuse them.
So at the end of the day, the halakha is that the non-action on the negative commandment is liable.
Will not get you lashes.
And I will not get you that.
Yeah. Once again, it's two opinions. Right now, that Mishnah was it?
No.
Yeah. So that's now
At the end of the day, so yeah.
Right. So now the problem was like this. This is all to answer for Rabbi Yishmael. The Mishnah couldn't be Rabbi Yishmael and it couldn't be Rabbi Akiva. And the assumption is it was one of those two. It wasn't the third opinion. One of those two. If it was Rabbi Yishmael, he only holds your chayv a korban for 2 out of the 4 cases. You say, okay, it's lashes. If it's lashes, it must be that you're liable for lashes. Okay. So now, b'mayu kimtek Rabbi Yishmael ula malchus. You made the Mishnah like Rabbi Yishmael, and you said that 2 that are 4 are referring to lashes. Well, once again, we have 4 cases in the Mishnah of 2 that are 4s. One of the cases is saras, leprosy. So there it says 2 that are 4. What lashes are there? Well, the malchus, my malchusika. What lashes? Just 4 categories of saras. You have to know, is this saras or not? Where is there lashes there? If you get saras, you get lashes? No. If you get saras, you have saras, right? You get to go in seclusion. You have to have some quiet time. Yeah, it's like Corona. You're by yourself, but you don't get lashes. Who says there's lashes? Tell me, no. There is one case of lashes. Bikotet baherto. If you cut off your tzaras, that the Torah says hishamer benega hatzaras or benega hatzaraat. You're Sparty, yeah. So we have 1.5 Spartim here. So Jared Bowen, I don't know, Morocco, yeah. So if you, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, half Ashkenaz in Moroccan, I don't know. So just kidding, Jared. Watch his Yiddish. There we go. Now we're talking. So abyssal, yeah. So that's all I know. So if it says in the Torah, Hishamer, you should be careful. Now it didn't say low, right? If it says low in the Torah, don't do something. You know, low is definitely a negative commandment. However, Rabbi Avin Amar Rabbi La taught us, Amar Rabbi Avin Amar Rabbi La, Kol Makom, whenever the Torah says, Shenamar Hishamar, so be careful, pen less, or Va'al, and don't, those are all different phraseologies which teach us it's a negative commandment. So Hishamer, Benegatzaras, that you should, be careful about a Negatzaras is another way of saying don't cut it off. There's a negative violation. So that would be the case where if you were to cut off one of these 4 categories of tzaras, then you would get lashes. Okay, that's very good. So far, so good. One problem. Yitzia Shabbos, you did Hotzah on Shabbos. That's another one of the categories. and hotzah on Shabbos, whether you're private to public or public to private domain, you're liable if you do it advertently, skila, like everything on Shabbos, inadvertently, kares. Where's their malchus? Yitzias Shabbos, my malchus, ika, what are the malchus? It's a lav, also from malchus, lav shenitin lazharis misas bezdin who? It's a negative commandment which is given over. It's so severe that bezdin it's subject to capital punishment. And so the case always is, if you gave somebody a warning for lashes on a negative commandment that you're liable capital punishment, that's called a lav, a negative commandment, shenitan la'azharas misas bezdin, which its warning is capital punishment. That the rule is the kol lav shenitan la'azharas misas bezdin ain lo lav. So guy's about to carry from a public to a private domain, and you warn him, if you do this, you're going to get lashes. I'm doing it anyways. You don't give him lashes. The punishment is capital punishment. So that's one question. So says the Gemara, Mishum hachi kamo kimna Rabbi Shmuel. It says, well, no. Because of that reason, we actually made the Mishnah like Rabbi Shmuel. Why? Rabbi Shmuel holds the Amar Lab, Shanitan Lab, sorry, Mrs. Bezdin, Lokan Lab. That's also two opinions. And the second opinion is a commandment which carries with it capital punishment. If you were to warn the guy for Malchus, there's another opinion that holds you do get Malchus, and we're saying that's the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. So that's not a problem for us. That's fine. Says the Gemara, Mishum Hachi, like because of this, but Halav Hachi. But if not for this, if not that you held, that the Mishnah held, you get Malchus for such an Avera, you would have made the Mishnah like Rabbi Akiva. If not for this, is the only reason you made like Rabbi Shmuel is to teach you that a negative commandment which carries with it capital punishment. If you were to warn for Malchus, then you would get lashes. But if not for that, you would say it's like Rabbi Akiva. How could that be? What was the problem with Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva only says you're liable for two categories of impurity. The two categories of the food being impure. But walking into the Beis HaMikdash or the Beit HaMikdash, when you're impure, that's not going to make you liable. So it can't be Rabbi Akiva either. So what do you mean, Mishum Hachi? Because of this is Rabbi Shmuel. And if not for that to be Rabbi Akiva, Kasha Yedias. Then you're going to be stuck with the problem of Yedias Tumah. And of those four categories of Tumah, Rabbi Akiva only agreed with two of them. Okay. So says the Gemara, Lav Amris Rabbi Shmuel he Ulim Malchus. Did you not tell us that the Mishnah is Rabbi Shmuel? And you changed it to a case of Malchus. Well, once you're doing that, maybe, according to Rabbi Akiva, you should also get Malchus. So Rabbi Akiva says that make the Mishnah Rabbi Akiva, and you'll be liable lashes. Rabbi Akiva Nami Ula Malchus. So now on this idea that for the four categories of impurity, whether the food's impure, you're impure, you're not sure where the Beis HaMikdash was, you forgot. So those cases, if that's going to get you lashes, we're going to have big questions on this. First question is, I think three questions. Let's see. If that's true, why does the Mishnah call it Yedias HaTumah? It's the knowledge of impurity. It should be Yedias HaSros. If you got warned for it, because once you're talking about lashes, you have to have warnings for it. You have to be warned for it. So it should be really Yedias HaSros, the knowledge of warning. Says that's not a problem. Halokasha. So teach when it says Yedias HaTumah, knowledge of Tumah, it doesn't mean knowledge of Tumah and I had a lapse and I forgot and I'm liable to sacrifice. It means knowledge of a warning and I violated the warning, so I got lashes. Okay, that one we could answer up. Ihachi. If that's true though, Shtaim Shein Arba, Tartihu Dehavim. It's not two that are four. If you're talking about inadvertent actions and you're liable to sacrifice, so you have four cases where you had an inadvertent act. So you were tamei, the food was tamei. You have four permutations of that. But if it's talking about lashes, it's only two cases really. You get warned, this is kodesh, don't eat it, or you get warned, you're impure and don't walk into the Beis HaMikdash. So there's only two warnings you can get, not four warnings. That's one. Visu, the Mishnah keeps going. You remember that you knew you were impure in the beginning and then you forgot. Why is it doing that? If the whole Mishnah is telling you you just get lashes for eating things that are in a state of impurity, then what's this whole thing? You knew it was 6 in the morning, and then you forgot, and then you remembered again. You didn't remember, you yet remembered. That's all very much sounding like it's talking about inadvertent actions, a shogeg, which you're liable a korban for. Which, if that's true, then it can't be Rabbi Akiva. So v'su ashesh b'yediyah b'tchila b'yediyah b'sof b'helam b'intayim, and you had a lapse in the middle. So lama lemalkus ma'avidete. If the whole point is to teach me lashes, what is this lapse doing? V'su, and another one is the Mishnah says you're liable to bring a korban ola v'yored. You're liable to bring a korban ola v'yored. So those are 3 KOs on Rabbi Akiva. So, okay, 3 minutes to go. We'll just start. El Amar Rabbi Yosef, says Rabbi Yosef, go back on the whole thing. The Mishnah is not Rabbi Akiva, and it's not Rabbi Shmuel. Rather, it's Rebbe. Rebbe himself, who compiled the Mishnayos, and he chose that the beginning of the Mishnah is going to be according to Rabbi Akiva, and all one's going to be according to Rabbi Shmuel, or the other way around. The beginning of the 2 that are 4 Shavuos is Rabbi Akiva, and 2 that are 4 impurities is going to be Rabbi Shmuel. The Nasivla, he formulated the Mishnah, Aliba de Tanai, B'Yediyas Nasivla Rabbi Shmuel, and B'Shvuas Nasivla Rabbi Akiva. When it came to Yediyas Hatuma, he made it like Rabbi Shmuel, who agrees there are 4 categories and you're liable to korban. And when it came to Shavuos, he made it like Rabbi Akiva, who says you're also liable 2 that are 4. So the assumption was it's one or the other. Yeah, we had problems. But now we're saying Rebbe himself held Shavuos is like him, and Yediyas Hatuma is like him, and therefore the Mishnah is not going to be problematic. Okay.